Hello everyone and welcome back to this time a bit of a different thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to call this an entirely new series or just kind of a spicy variety hour type weekly thing where I do another game that I'm currently playing. As a fun fact, I don't actually spend all my time playing Dawn of War 3. But yeah, on the side I have actually, between making videos and, other things, I have been playing a bit of Starcraft 2, which, if you're not aware, is more or less the current biggest real-time strategy RTS game out there, with a thriving esports scene, despite it being a very old game. I think it's like 8 to 10 years old, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's fairly old for a game. I mean, it doesn't look fantastic, but the art style has definitely saved it. In many ways, it's quite cartoony, quite pleasant to look at, no matter what settings you've got it on. But yeah, basically it's still alive, still thriving, and more or less that means that you can spend a lot of time learning this very complex game and always find matches. It's really quite pleasant, and it has a really nice replay system, which I will be taking full advantage of today. So this game is going to be my promotion from Silver League. So how the ranked ladder in StarCraft 2 works is there's several leagues. There's Bronze, there's Silver, there's Gold, there's Platinum, Diamond, Masters, and then like Grandmasters, I think. And in each of those leagues, there are several tiers within that leagues. There's sort of Silver 3, Silver 2, Silver 1, and once you get to the top of Silver 1, you get promoted to Gold 3, and then, you kind of carry on as you would expect. Gold 3, Gold 2, Gold 1, whatever league is after that, I think it's Platinum, and more or less take it from there. So it represents a really nice kind of esportsy game for you to just sink your teeth into, trying to improve mechanics, improve kind of knowledge, and yeah, just sink a few hours into ranked and either lose or get better and start kicking some major ass. So, as I said, this is the game that promoted me to Gold 3, which is the highest I've ever got, which is not saying much because in StarCraft 2 I have not played much of the multiplayer up until recently. But yeah, recently I've been really enjoying it. I previously played Zerg, which as you can see is my opponent, Alzian, in the top left corner in the red trunks. But since I started playing most recently, I switched to Protoss. Terran, by the way, I do not get along with. I hate the mechanics. I hate the fact that their buildings are all finicky and you can lift them and all that kind of jazz. Protoss, it's streamlined, it's easy, and you just A-click to win. I'm kidding, but yeah, Protoss are the race that I'm currently focusing on. So, without further ado, let's get underway, shall we? And I will click play. So, let's slow this down to normal, which I believe is, yeah, faster. There we go. So yes, in the top left corner, my opponent, Alzian, playing as the Zerg race, a monstrous, hive-minded race of alien bug things that morph into more advanced bug things and then eat your face. And in the bottom right corner, you've got Protoss with Slippers, who is in the blue trunks, a psychically focused race. If you know Warhammer 40,000, it's basically based off of the Eldar, a bit of a psychic thing, a bit of a super high-tech thing going on. Very standard, just the classic super advanced alien race. So the build I'm going for here, it's very standard. You make a pylon so you don't get supply blocked as you make more workers, and then you make a gateway as soon as it's finished. My timing this match, funnily enough, even though I did get promoted, was actually slightly late. I was actually on like 125 minerals before I built the pylon, and the pylon costs 100, so that's just a mistake. I wasn't focusing as much as perhaps I could have been. And after the gateway, you make a simulator, which allows you to harvest the sweet gas geysers. And that for Protoss is a very big deal, more so than most of the other races, as a lot of their units require gas. So Warp Gate Tech requires gas, the Mothership Core requires gas, and Adept, Stalkers, if you want to make any serious number of them, all of those things, they all require gas. And even the Robo Facility, that also requires gas. Or even if you were going to go down the road of Twilight Council into Blink Stalkers, or upgraded attack speed Adepts, hell, even going for Charge Zealots, who knows? But the underlying point is that you need gas, and therefore getting a very quick assimilator is definitely a good idea. So, let's play around with some of these shortcuts. So since nothing's really happened, we're both on more or less the same economy. The Zerg player, as is fairly standard, often takes a faster expansion base, which is the way you kind of expand and grow in StarCraft 2. You see these mineral patches and the gas guys are there. What you do is you make a worker go over here, build a building that is your, like another base essentially, that allows you to build more units, etc, etc, and harvest from all these resources. And then you make workers, start saturating this base with workers, harvest all of those sweet, sweet minerals and all the gas, and then you take it from there. So Zerg, by and large, expand fairly quickly, as they are the swarmy race. That's just how they mechanically work, and also because their larva comes directly from the main hatchery. So the more hatcheries they have, the more larvae they have, the more units they can make at any one time. Be those units either workers in a passive, slow game, or, aggressive units like fighting units like Zerglings or Banelings. So I've started with my expansion. It's just about finished. As you can see, quite a bit slower than the Zerg. He's already got 4 workers here and a queen. Meanwhile, this has only just gone up, which is pretty standard. And I'm also expanding into multiple gateways. I'm still researching into warp gate tech, which will allow me to warp units within any kind of psionic field created by these sweet, sweet looking pylons. And as you can see, there's a bit of a thing happening here. My opponent is going for a fairly aggressive Zergling and Baneling focused build. As you can see in the production tab, he is building a Baneling nest, and it's almost halfway through. He's going to go into basic upgrades for Zerglings and Banelings, so that's often speed for both of those units, Zergling speed, Baneling speed, as well as melee upgrades, armor upgrades, which for Zerg is called carapace upgrades. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of an aggressive early game. So as you can see, I've gone for a Twilight Council, and I am currently researching the Resonating Glaives, which massively increases the early game power of Adepts, who otherwise aren't that useful. They're very slow firing. They do a fair amount of damage. Yeah, so versus light units, they do 22 damage, which Zerglings do count as. So definitely a wise choice on my part. I don't even know if I scouted those Zerglings. I did in fact scout them, I think. Actually, no, that's... yeah, there we go. I did not scout them. What I did scout, though, was the timing of the spawning pool, which allowed me to assume that he was going for at least some early units, although not necessarily, I was thinking, in these kind of numbers. As you can see, lots of Zerglings, a bunch of Banelings. Very scary. So, Banelings, if you don't know, what they do is essentially they roll around, and when they hit a unit, they explode and does a bunch of AoE damage, which can be quite frightening if you're not prepared for it. But at this point, I've definitely seen them, and I was definitely preparing for them regardless. So a bunch of Adepts, coupled with the Mothership Core ability to make pylons into massively powerful cannons in the early game, and I can fairly stably hold on to my units and my buildings, which is definitely the main thing, and more importantly, my workers, who have not been touched by this attack. So with a couple of Adepts, my Mothership Core's overcharge ability, and warping in some more Adepts as Warp Gate is now finished, I am able to hold off the initial Zergling kind of frontal attack, which is definitely the scariest point in a game like this, as if you don't hold off that initial attack, the Banelings go into your mineral line, they blow up, say, like 6-7 drones, or probes, I guess, for this Protoss, and then maybe the rest of the Zerglings go and start destroying your gateways, your warp gates, maybe a Twilight Council. Suddenly you can't build the units you want to, and you don't have the production, the workers in the backline to make the resources that you need in the first place. So the initial attack was held off. And it doesn't look like he's going to be investing into any more drones anytime soon, which is, just reinforcing the idea that he's going for a fairly aggressive build. And given that Banelings do require gas to upgrade and morph those Zerglings into, he is going to be taking a second extractor on his main base, and he's also going for an extra extractor on his expansion. And you can see a bunch more Zerglings coming in, presumably to, in future, be morphed into more Banelings, as the Banelings are far scarier than the Zergling. Fun fact. So, given that the pylons were just so useful with their overcharge ability from the mothership core, I'm just going to prop up another couple just out at the front to kind of force him to think when he moves in for his next attack, you know, do I attack the units or do I focus on the pylons? As the pylons potentially are very scary with the overcharge effect from the mothership core, but also the units by themselves are scary because, you know, they can just kill stuff. So yeah, at this point, the game's actually swinging very much in my favour. I've got more or less 2 bases, you know, fully saturated and mining. Admittedly, I could be mining the gas from this base, which also only has, you know, point of fact, only 1 gas geyser. But yeah, that's the only real misplay I think I've made so far. Everything else has been fairly solid given the aggressive state of the game. Potentially, I might have been able to expand a bit quicker. But if I tried to expand, I probably would have found out that there was a great big kind of Zergling Baneling party going on underneath the watchful eyes of the Serene Overlord. So I think that shooting, yeah, I just find an Overlord, so I shoot that down, deny his vision, force him to build, and actually supply blocks him, which is what happens when a player runs out of supply providing buildings or units, in the case of the Zerg, the Overlord. So as Protoss, I build pylons to increase my supply and my maximum counter my army, and as a Zergling, as a Zerg player, I should say, he builds Overlords, which are those floating beasties that you can see there, the bulbous guys. So getting rid of them actually stops him from building any more units for the time being, which is definitely in my favour, as I'm not supply blocked, and therefore, as we can see, I am still expanding my army. I've got 44 army supply compared to his 32. And if we look at the latest addition to my army, I've got just a few zealots, just to add a bit of meat, a bit of body to this army, and coupled with a charge upgrade for zealots, which turns them from a fairly basic slow meta unit, which admittedly does fairly decent damage unupgraded, you know, 8 damage, that's not bad, with 2 attacks as well, that's worth mentioning, but it turns it from being fairly slow and clunky into a unit that can actually charge into the fray and act as a nice kind of meat buffer against some nasty, say, Baneling hits. And that will in turn protect my slightly more fragile Stalkers and Adepts, well, less so the Adepts, but definitely the Stalkers from getting hit. So seeing that I'm not under attack at the moment, I decide to quickly just take my 3rd base and see if I can defend it. You know, I've still got the potential to cancel this if he suddenly attacks right now, but seeing as he doesn't, I'm more than happy to take this and fight in this kind of a choke place, choke location, where the width isn't so great, so I'm at less risk of being surrounded as, you know, massively, so my Stalkers at the back will be far safer. And as you can see, with a massive army of Zerglings and Banelings, he pushes in, and my Zealots take a ton of damage, and more than prove their worth here, and as you can see, my Mothership is ordered over. I make 2 pylon overcharges, which scares off the remaining Zergling and Baneling forces, which is very nice. So I poke in just to see how many he has left, and to confirm that he's still going for this hyper-aggressive kind of style. I say hyper-aggressive because he's not investing anywhere near as much into his economy and his upgrades and his tech as I am. So if we take a look at what I'm doing, well, I've got a robotics bay, which allows me to build Colossus. Colossus being one of the most iconic units in the Protoss race. They're essentially massive walkers, similar to, if you've seen War of the Worlds, the latest War of the Worlds film, which was actually quite a while back now, suddenly feeling terribly old. The Colossus are basically those walkers, and they shoot massive laser beams that burn and incinerate everything that they hit, and also do bonus damage to biological units, I think, which will be very useful against this mass Zergling Baneling sort of mass light unit style. So yeah, currently repeatedly repulsing his attacks, which is making me feel as a player safer and safer, so I do believe I start making more probes to max out on this base and get all the resources possible. I'm focusing on the gas geysers because, as you can see in the top right corner, my Vespian gas count is much less than my mineral count, And as mentioned earlier, gas is a lot more important for Protoss than minerals are, really. Although, to be fair, once you've got the Charged Zealot upgrade, Zealots suddenly become a very viable way to sink all of those rapidly accumulating minerals into. So yeah, it's not too bad. Adepts as well are fairly solid. So as you can see here, I warp in a bunch of Zealots, and also have my first Colossus hit the field. So I poke out, you know, having a gander at what might be happening. And seeing that he's still going for the same build, not transitioning into, I don't know, a Hydra Den, and then into, you know, Hydra Banelings, something like that, or Mutalisks, anything like that. I'm perfectly happy to take this fight. With all my gateway units, I definitely feel confident, and particularly with this Colossus, which, as we can see, has already gotten 4 kills, suddenly gets 5, and I've also got ground weapon upgrades level 1, and he GG's and taps out. And with that, I ascend into the glorious ranks of Gold League, level 3. By the way, purely sarcastic, I'm very much aware that I'm still a huge scrub at this game, but it's super entertaining to learn a new game and improve at it, and StarCraft 2, being the old horse that it is currently, being fairly aged, it's got all the tools you need to improve. You've got this super in-depth replay system, you've got like really comprehensive kind of post-match breakdowns of your statistics. Were you focusing on economy? At what point maybe did you lose a match? At what point did you win a match? And you have the option of, as soon as you play a game, just instantly rewind the match and hop into the replay kind of seamlessly. It's a really fun game. If you haven't played it and you want to try something sort of with a thriving kind of competitive scene with a lot of kind of production behind it, then yeah, this would definitely be a possibility. Slight criticism, with all these minerals I had, I definitely could have been maxing out this base. I assumed that I actually did, but it turns out that I did not. Sad face. So yeah, this base was doing fine, although, shout outs to this very empty gas geyser assimilator. I was not mining from there, which would have helped, as I do want the gas. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good game to get into gold with. Kind of facing a lot of aggression, just kind of stabilizing, feeling the right moment to expand into a third and a second, and etc, etc. Teching up into the I think the correct unit for the situation at hand, you know, Colossus being very good against light biological units, and then getting multiple of them at this point. If the game had continued, which, to be fair, the Zerg player probably could have continued playing. He wasn't out of resources, it was just that his strategy hadn't worked as planned, so we felt it better to GG and tap out. But had the game gone on longer, I could have gotten the Colossus specific upgrade, Extended Thermal Lance, which increases the range of the Colossus and therefore makes them last a lot longer because they're, you know, further back and get more shots off. And I also probably would have gotten, you know, ground weapons level 2, which, coupled with the AoE damage of the Colossus, again would have been a huge deal. So, as always guys, thank you for watching. Just a little bit of something different, really, just a little bit of variety, a little bit of spice to the broth that is life and, I guess, gaming. So yeah, if you want more StarCraft 2, don't hesitate to give me a shout. I will probably be able to provide for that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Ta-ta!